So now let's go over here.
Hello, Mr. Buffett. I got two short questions. One is, how do you find intrinsic value in a company?
Well, intrinsic value is the number that if you were all knowing about the future and could predict all the cash that a business would give you between now and Judgment Day, discounted at the proper discount rate, that number is what the intrinsic value of a business is. In other words, the only reason for making an investment and laying out money now is to get more money later on, right? That's what investing is all about. Now, when you look at a stock, when you look at a bond, assuming it's the United States government bond, it's very easy to tell how much you're going to get back. It says it right on the bond. It says when you get the interest payments, it says when you get the principal. So it's very easy to figure out the value of a bond. It can change tomorrow if interest rates change, but the cash flows are printed on the bond. The cash flows aren't printed on a stock certificate. That's the job of the analyst, is to print out, change that stock certificate, which represents an interest in the business, and change that into a bond and say, this is what I think it's going to pay out in the future. When we buy, some new machine for Shaw to make carpet, that's what we're thinking about, obviously, and you all learn that in business school. But it's the same thing for a big business. If you buy Coca-Cola today, the company is selling for about $110 to $15 billion in the market. The question is, if you had 110 or 15 billion, you wouldn't be listening to me, but I'd be listening to you incidentally. But the question is, would you lay it out today to get what the Coca-Cola company is going to deliver to you over the next 200 or 300 years? The discount rate doesn't make much difference as you get further out. And that is a question of how much cash they're going to give you. It isn't a question of, it isn't a question of how many analysts are going to recommend it or what the volume in the stock is or what the chart looks like or anything. It's a question of how much cash it's going to give you. That's the only reason. It's true if you're buying a farm. It's true if you're buying an apartment house. Any financial asset. Oil in the ground, you're laying out cash now to get more cash back later on. And the question is how much are you going to get, when are you going to get it, and how sure are you? And when I calculate intrinsic value of a business, when we buy businesses, and whether we're buying all of a business or a little piece of a business, I always think we're buying the whole business because that's my approach to it. I look at it and say, what will come out of this business and when? And what you really like, of course, is them to be able to use the money they earn and earn higher returns on it as you go along. I mean, Berkshire has never distributed anything to its shareholders, but its ability to distribute goes up as the value of the businesses we own increases. We can compound it internally, but the real question is, Berkshire selling for, we'll say, 105 or so billion now. What can we distribute from that 100? If you're going to buy the whole company for 105 billion now, can we distribute enough cash to you soon enough to make it sensible at present interest rates to lay out that cash now? And that's what it gets down to. And if you can't answer that question, you can't buy the stock. You can gamble in the stock if you want to, or your neighbors can buy it. But if you don't answer that question, and I can't answer that for internet companies, for example. There are a lot of companies, there are all kinds of companies I can't answer it for, but I just stay away from those. I've been taught by Ben Graham to buy things on a quantitative basis. Look around for things that are cheap. And that I was taught that, we'll say in 1949 or 50, it made a big impression on me. So I went around looking for what I call used cigar butts of stocks. And the cigar butt approach to buying stocks is that you walk down the street and you're looking around for cigar butts and you find this on the street, this terrible looking, soggy, ugly looking cigar, one puff left in it. But you pick it up and you get your one puff. Disgusting, you throw it away, but it's free. I mean, it's cheap. And then you look around for another soggy, one puff cigarette. Well, that's what I did for years. It's a mistake. Although you can make money doing it, but you can't make it with big money. It's so much easier just to buy wonderful businesses. So now I would rather buy a wonderful business at a fair price than a fair business at a wonderful price. I have an old-fashioned belief that I should expect to make money in things that I understand. And when I say understand, I don't mean understand, what the product does or anything like that. I mean, understand what the economics of the business are likely to look like 10 years from now or 20 years from now. I know, in general, what the economics of, say, Wrigley chewing gum will look like 10 years from now. The internet isn't going to change the way people chew gum. It isn't going to change which gum they chew. If you own the chewing gum market in a big way, and you've got Double Mint and Spearmint and Juicy Fruit, those brands will be there 10 years from now. So I can't pinpoint exactly what the numbers are going to look like on Wrigley, but I'm not going to be way off if I try to look forward on something like that. That evaluating that company is within what I call my circle of competence. I understand what they do, I understand the economics of it, I understand the competitive aspects of the business. The biggest mistakes we've made by far, I've made, not we've made, biggest mistakes I've made by far are mistakes of omission and not commission. I mean, it's the things I knew enough to do, they were within my circle of competence, and I was sucking my thumb. And that is really, those are the ones that hurt. They don't show up anyplace. I probably cost Berkshire at least $5 billion, for example, by sucking my thumb 20 years ago or close to it when Fannie Mae was having some troubles, and we could have bought the whole company for practically nothing. And I don't worry about that if it's Microsoft, because I don't know it. Microsoft isn't in my circle of competence. And so I don't have any reason to think I'm entitled to make money out of Microsoft or out of cocoa beans or whatever. But I did know enough to understand Fannie Mae, and I blew it. And that never shows up under conventional accounting. But I know the cost of it. I passed it up. And those are the big, big mistakes. And I've had plenty of them. Unless I tell you about them in the annual report, and I resist the temptation sometimes, unless I tell you about them in the annual report, you're not going to know it because it doesn't show up under conventional accounting. But omission is way bigger than commission. There's big opportunities in life have to be seized. We don't do very many things, but when we get the chance to do something that's right and big, we've got to do it. And even to do it in a small scale is just as big a mistake almost as not doing it at all. I mean, you really gotta grab them when they come, because you're not going to get 500 great opportunities. The answer is that investors behave in very human ways, which is they get very excited during bull markets, and they look in the rearview mirror and they say, I made money last year, I'm going to make more money this year, so this time I'll borrow, or the neighbor says, I wasn't in last year when that neighbor who was dumber than I made a lot of money, so I'm going to go in this year. So they're always looking in the rearview mirror. And when they look in the rearview mirror and they see a lot of money having been made in the last few years, they plow in and they just push and push and push on prices. And when they look in the rearview mirror and they see no money having been made, they just say, this is a lousy place to be. So they don't care what's going on in the underlying business. And it's astounding, but that makes for huge opportunity, just huge opportunity. In terms of our wholly owned businesses, we're not going to sell no matter how much anybody offers us for. I mean, if somebody offers us 3 times what something is worth at See's Candy, the Buffalo News, Borsheim's, whatever it may be, we're not going to sell it. I may be wrong in having that approach. I know I'm not wrong if I owned 100% of Berkshire, because that's the way I want to live my life. I've got all the money I could possibly need. It just amounts to a change in the newspaper story on my obituary and the amount of money that the foundation has. And to break off relationships with people I like and people that have joined me because they think it's a permanent home, to do that simply because somebody waves a big check at me would be like selling one of my children because somebody waved a big check. So I won't do that. And I want to tell my partners I won't do it so that they're not disappointed in me. More and more with certain stocks, we've got that approach. Now, if we were chronically short of funds and had all kinds of opportunities coming, we might have a somewhat different approach. But our inclination is not to sell things unless we get really discouraged perhaps with the management, or we think the economic characteristics of the business change in a big way. I mean, and that happens. So, but we're not going to sell simply because it looks too high, in all likelihood. I mean, you can't make that 100.
就講一講內在價值。咁內在價值咧喺各位投資大師入邊咧講過咧係一個模糊嘅數，係唔能夠準確咁樣去用數目字定佢係值幾多嘅。但係我哋係能夠喺模糊之中去睇到佢嘅內在價值係啲乜嘢。咁亦係一個好好嘅比喻，就係一個300磅嘅肥仔，我哋係唔能夠準確知道佢係300磅嘅，但係我哋可以好肯定嘅一樣嘢就係佢係肯定係一個肥仔，而且佢嘅體重 喺我哋嘅推算入邊可以知道佢係喺250至350之間嘅一個重量。呢個就係內在價值入邊可以俾我哋睇到嘅嘢。我哋會知道佢一定唔會係喺100至120磅，亦會一定唔會係喺500至700磅之間。呢個就係我哋可以揾到內在價值嘅方法。咁而喺會計學嘅計算內在價值入邊咧，我哋咧可以咧從而咧喺總資產同總負債之間揾出嚟。咁我哋就將公司嘅總資產減去總負債，再除翻公司所發行嘅股票數量。咁就舉個例子啦，公司嘅資產有1000蚊，而佢咧就問咗銀行啊，問咗債務人借咗500蚊，而公司嘅股數咧就有100股。咁我哋得出嘅結果咧就係500除100，咁佢間公司咧就應該係值5蚊嘅。但係呢個情況之下咧，我咧就會咧去打個折嘅。咁我咧就會將佢咧再乘翻0.8。咁點解咧？就係因為咧，其實咧公司嘅核數師、會計師係邊個請翻嚟啊？係咪政府請過去啊？係咪證監會請過去？係自己公司請翻嚟去計自己盤數啊嘛。咁如果核數師計條數計得唔靚，你估公司仲會唔會同核數師去續約咧？咁啊多數都唔會嘅。咁代表啲乜嘢咧？就係核數師會用盡佢嘅方法，合法地將呢盤數做到有咁靚得咁靚，有幾咁多資產得幾咁多資產，有幾咁少負債得幾咁少負債，即係代表入邊盤數係會有水位嘅。咁我哋就俾個水位佢下，將佢盤數乘翻0.8，我當你我都喺入邊度再計翻個數，係屬於自己心底裏知道個數。咁你就會知道個股價大約喺4蚊呢個位置啦。好啦，咁有啲數學咧就係表達唔到用數目字去表達出嚟嘅。喺會計上，好似公司個人才，佢請咗一個好叻嘅人去幫佢揾到錢，佢公司嘅品牌，佢有啲好特質嘅嘢，佢揾錢嘅能力，個系統係有其他行業係代替唔到嘅。咁呢啲喺個數學上係唔會喺個會計表入邊反映出嚟嘅，而呢啲數就要你去加翻個數落去間公司嘅資產嗰度，因為每一間公司都會有唔同嘅特質喺入邊嘅。即係點解會形容唔到佢係值幾錢呢？就好似一樣嘢就係一個靚女究竟佢值幾錢，其實係講唔出佢究竟值幾錢嘅嘢，就係呢啲咁嘅特質。咁我哋就將佢相加呢樣嘢究竟值幾多錢，佢公司有幾多個人才，佢呢個品牌值幾多錢，咁再相加喺佢個數目入邊，再除翻佢股數，咁你就會得出佢個 range 係幾多。咁呢一度冇可能咁多個人才多過佢資產咁多噶嘛，咁你咪大約知道佢公司嘅價值係4至5蚊。喺呢個情況之下，咁你就可以選擇到喺呢一個叫做現有嘅內在價值。但係我哋投資其實係講緊未來，所以咧我哋會知道佢而家係值4至5蚊。如果股價而家就已經係4至5蚊樓下，咁你咪買入咯。咁6蚊都係可以買入嘅，因為呢一個指標你要明白一樣嘢就係 around 嘅啫。好啦，因為我哋仲要再去做一樣嘢就係喺未來嘅內在價值係值幾多。咁如果你會知道佢每年係可以賺到100蚊嘅，咁10年之後，咁間公司就變咗做2000蚊㗎啦。咁佢就會變咗做2000蚊。咁而佢嘅負債，我當佢都係一樣，咁就會變咗做1000蚊。咁佢嘅股數係不變，咁你就知道佢10年後究竟值幾錢啦。佢10年後佢內在價值齋以會計嘅數，佢就會值10蚊。咁如果佢而家嘅股價係5蚊嘅情況，佢 keep 住係咁樣，其實10年後已經係可以變到10蚊。咁代表一樣嘢就係你而家將5蚊擺喺佢間公司，10年之後就係變咗做10蚊。咁呢個就係佢未來嘅價值。咁你就要衡量翻究竟值唔值得去投資啦。如果你知道佢未來係值10蚊嘅，咁你又而家會唔會擺5蚊落去投資喺佢呢間公司嗰度啦？咁呢個就係個內在價值入邊嘅概念。